US overtakes China with most cases. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson tests positive for COVID-19. Residents of 20 houses in Attalugama in Bandaragama under quarantine. Travelling restricted. Legal action initiated against 3 COVID-19 patients. Strict curfew regulations. Police bail will not be granted to those who violate the police curfew from today. Maximum wholesale price imposed for vegetables.
පාර්ලිමේන්තු මිලට වැඩියෙන් විකුණලා අහුවෙන්න එපා. අපි නිලධාරී නීති මාර්ගයෙන් දැඩි කටයුතු කරලා තමුන්ගේ වෙළඳ බලපත්‍රය අහුරුස්ති කිරීමට කටයුතු කරනවා.
World Bank Group and IMF request all official bilateral creditors to suspend debt repayments for developing nations to help face COVID-19 outbreak.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime News on TV1. On to your lead story now. The United States now has more confirmed cases of COVID-19 than any other country, with more than 85,500 patients. According to the latest figures issued by the Johns Hopkins University, the United States has overtaken China at 81,782 cases and Italy 80,589. As we all remember, this all started from China and then it moved on to Italy, then to Spain, and now it has finally come to the United States. The United States has now more than confirmed cases of COVID-19 with a figure of 85,500 patients.
But with almost 1,300 COVID-19 related fatalities, the US death toll lags behind China at 3,291 and Italy at 8,215. The grim milestone comes as President Donald Trump predicted the nation would get back to work pretty quickly.
The United States is now the #1 country in the world for identifying the coronavirus, around 85,000. Underneath that is China and then Italy. So the world is going ahead, and what we're seeing out here is still this frenzy where across our community, we're all still locked in like many other communities across the whole world here. So, but we have to look at it in a different perspective here. The U.S. Senate made a decision to go ahead and put together a stimulus package that will help businesses be able to pay employees and also put some money into some of the folks' pockets to help stimulate the economy here.
Vice President Mike Pence said coronavirus tests were now available in all 50 states and more than 552,000 tests have been conducted nationwide. There have been growing fears that Louisiana could become the country's next hotspot, with the governor warning that the state's biggest city, New Orleans, could be out of ventilators by the 2nd of April and potentially out of beds by 7th of April. Additionally, Dr. Deborah Birx, the coordinator of the White House coronavirus response, said 2 other cities showed signs of rapidly rising new infections: Detroit, where the mayor described the situation as really concerning, and Chicago.
U.S. citizens who live abroad should arrange for immediate return to the United States unless they are prepared to remain abroad for an indefinite period. In an advisory to the U.S. citizens in Sri Lanka, the embassy here in Sri Lanka said U.S. citizens who live abroad should avoid all international travel. It added, and I quote, "We strongly encourage travelers to depart as soon as possible, as scheduled flights may be cancelled with little advance warning. There are no plans for chartered or other evacuation flights from Sri Lanka to the United States," unquote. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has tested positive for COVID-19. Downing Street said his symptoms are mild and he will continue to lead the government response to the virus while he self-isolates. 537,017 people have contracted the virus, with more than 124,000 people recovered worldwide. More than 24,000 people have died, and countries are employing various methods of their own to try and stop the spread of the virus.
Dominic Raab will be acting Prime Minister if Boris Johnson is incapacitated by coronavirus. But so far, Johnson has said he will continue to lead UK's fight against COVID-19.
The number of coronavirus cases in the UK keeps increasing, and in response, a large convention centre in London is being converted into a 4,000-bed hospital facility. The UK government has reportedly ordered more than 3.5 million home test kits for coronavirus. These are small handheld devices And using a blood sample, they can detect antibodies such as IgM and IgG, which we produce in response to the virus.
Just a day after India's financial minister announced a $23 billion stimulus package, which critics say was not nearly enough to deal with the economic fallout of the coronavirus outbreak, the central bank has announced a raft of measures to stabilize the economy. 3 more people infected with coronavirus died overnight in India, bringing the tally up to 20, with 753 infected. Justin Trudeau also said his government would provide 27 billion Canadian dollars in stimulus directly to Canadian families and businesses struggling because of the coronavirus outbreak. Canada has recorded about 600 cases of the virus nationwide and 8 deaths. A patient infected with the coronavirus died, making it the first death related to the COVID-19 virus in Estonia.
Estonian government has declared the state of emergency on 12th March, which is likely to last until 1st of May. As of today, 538 people has been diagnosed with the disease and 1 casualty reported. All the public gatherings are banned and schools across the country has been closed since 16 March.
Australia's government said it would pump 17.6 billion Australian dollars into the economy to prevent the coronavirus outbreak, pushing the country into its first recession in nearly 30 years. Australia has a total of 3,166 infected with the virus and 116 new cases, with a total of 13 deaths due to COVID-19. Russia has stepped up its measures to tackle the pandemic and prevent its spread within the country.
There have been 1,036 cases of coronavirus patients reported in Russia so far. Our President Vladimir Putin has given 1 week paid holiday to encourage Russians to stay home. All universities and schools have been closed.
Israel will deploy its army to assist police on the streets to patrol and enforce the lockdown rules. Israel has reported more than 3,000 infections and 10 deaths from the disease. Vietnam will limit domestic flights and stop public gatherings for 2 weeks starting tomorrow. Indoor gatherings of more than 20 people and outdoor gatherings of more than 10 people will be banned. Thailand reported 91 new coronavirus cases with 1 fatality, bringing the total up to 1,136 and 5 deaths. Singapore imposed stiff penalties beginning today against individuals who are violating new rules on physical distancing as part of its new policy to contain the spread of coronavirus. The Indonesian government is racing against time to build a new hospital and turn a stadium into a makeshift hospital to house coronavirus patients as an effort to contain the spread across the archipelago. Indonesia has confirmed 790 cases and 58 deaths, but the data is seen as understating the scale of infections because of a low rate of testing and high mortality rate. China is closing its borders to most foreigners amid fears of imported novel coronavirus cases, causing a second outbreak in the country where the infection was first detected.
Newsfirst spoke to senior lecturer at the University of Colombo, Manik Wakumbura, about the international aspect of the COVID-19.
The spread of COVID-19 is bringing us unbelievable consequences to the world. The situation, which is worst hit in Europe by now, considered the world's richest economies, including United States of America, are struggling to recover their patients and lower the death curve. It is important that Sri Lanka also proactively think about how they should regain through intellectual coherence, where health experts, economic experts, military experts, experts in other fields such as entrepreneurial sector are work together for a national plan. It is also extremely doubted how fast the world can be recovered after this painful risk and also a threatful situation of the spread of COVID-19. World economists have already announced of a recession. Therefore, it is important that every single state take its own individual measures for safeguarding its economies and safeguarding its population.
The Ministry of Foreign Relations confirmed that a Sri Lankan citizen in Switzerland has died of COVID-19. The deceased was 59-year-old and he was employed in Switzerland. We are now joined by Newsfirst Sonali Vanigabaduge with the latest information from Switzerland.
I am currently in Geneva, Switzerland, dubbed the human rights capital of the world. But COVID-19 fears and restrictions have left one of the busiest cities almost deserted. Switzerland has been one of the most affected by this respiratory condition. As of this morning, 11,846 people testing positive with 194 deaths, among them a 59-year-old Sri Lankan man. There are also travel restrictions imposed on all Schengen and non-Schengen states, with additional checks on land borders with Austria, France, Germany, in addition to Italy. These are some of the developments from Geneva, with one message from the government of Switzerland: stay home. From Geneva, Switzerland, this is Sonali Wanigabadugay reporting for News First.
Thank you, Sonali. Now, 106 patients were tested positive for COVID-19 in the island as of this evening. Among them, 7 patients have completely recovered and they were discharged from the hospitals. 99 confirmed patients are still receiving treatment. 238 suspected cases are receiving treatment in hospitals, and meanwhile 7 Grama Seva divisions in the Atulagama area in Bandaragama were closed this afternoon. The measure has been taken after an infected patient was found from the area. Security forces closed 6 access roads in the Atulagama area this afternoon and warned the people to self-quarantine. The Asiri Hospital Group on their social media announced that a patient who had been under treatment at a state hospital, whose family deliberately withheld relevant information, tested positive for COVID-19 at the Asiri Medical Hospital yesterday. The patient had been immediately transferred to the IDH for treatment. The Asiri Hospital Group added that the medical staff who had been exposed to the patient have been quarantined under the advice of the epidemiology unit.
A person from the Atulugama area in Bandaragama tested positive for the virus. It has been revealed that he had 26 contact points. Upon obtaining medical advice, these 26 people have been quarantined at a facility in the area. Further, residents of this area have been requested to undergo self-quarantine at their houses.
A patient showing symptoms of a disease was admitted to the Sri Javardhanapura hospital yesterday. However, the patient was treated in a similar way to a COVID-19 patient and sent to the isolation unit. Upon having suspicion over the patient, the medical staff had adopted all safety precautions while treating him. After the patient had tested negative for coronavirus, he had gone to a private hospital. Since the patient had stayed only for 4 hours at the Sri Javardhanapura hospital, the medical staff who had worn the necessary protective gear had not maintained direct contact with the patient. We have been informed that the patient had discharged himself from the hospital on his own consent before going to a private hospital. The National Institute of Infectious Diseases is now taking steps to trace those who had maintained contact with him. 2 people in the patient's family have also been quarantined. This incident shows how the medical staff are exposed to the virus as a result of a person who conceals his true condition despite showing symptoms. We request the people to act in a responsible manner. There is no need to fear even if you have been affected by the virus. If you have maintained contact with a patient or a person who has arrived from overseas, please reveal that to the doctors. It is important to protect your lives and the lives of the other people and the medical staff.
The general public has been advised to adhere to the curfew which is in effect. The President's Media Division said it has instructed the Triforces and the police to strictly enforce curfew regulations.
This was the situation in Colombo and suburbs today while curfew was still in effect. When touring areas including Kotte, Talawatagoda, Bathrumulla, we witnessed how crowds had gathered opposite financial institutions and vegetable markets. A large crowd had arrived at the Talangama police station this morning to obtain permission to travel during curfew hours. Another group had also arrived at the Valikada prison station to obtain permission to travel during curfew hours. This was the situation on the Nugegoda Maharagama route at around 11 AM this morning. While the public was continued to be tested at the police checkpoint based at the Kalutara Colombo district borderline, crowds were also witnessed at several places in Moratuwa today. A group touring Armour Street in Colombo this afternoon were taken by the police to the Kotahena police station. Meanwhile, all vehicles entering Colombo were checked at the police checkpoint base near the New Caledonia Bridge. A group of individuals who visited the town of Horana today without a curfew pass or any permission was sent back with the intervention of the Horana police. Considering these incidents and following the instructions to strictly enforce curfew restrictions, the police and army have acted immediately in this regard. This was the situation in certain areas during evening hours today. The President's Media Division urged the general public to refrain from travelling during curfew hours as curfew restrictions have been imposed to curb the spread of the pandemic COVID-19. It added only military vehicles that have obtained the permission of the Presidential Task Force are allowed to travel, while other vehicles that have not obtained curfew passes will not be allowed to travel while curfew is in effect. Travelling between districts is prohibited, while tours with foreigners from one destination to another is also prohibited. Meanwhile, the Police Inspector General instructed to close all supermarkets today. Police headquarters informed this decision was taken after it was notified that certain supermarkets had resumed selling its goods to consumers while permission was only granted to sell essential items. The police had instructed to shut down all pharmacies except for state-run pharmacies while home delivery is permitted. When we considered the patients who were tested positive for the virus yesterday, a majority of them had concealed having symptoms. The relatives of these patients had provided the true details to the relevant health officials. Do not be afraid to admit it if you or one of your relatives shows symptoms. Do not get admitted to a hospital. Inform the nearest police station or the 119 emergency unit. We will do the needful. However, based on the irresponsible conduct of certain patients in the recent past, suspicion risen as to whether they had acted in such a manner to spread the virus. We have initiated 3 investigations against 3 patients. All 3 of them had not abided by the quarantine regulation by making false remarks and getting themselves admitted to the hospital. Afterwards, it has been revealed that they had concealed their true condition despite showing symptoms of the virus.
Curfew was lifted in 5 districts today for a period of 8 hours, and this is what transpired in those areas.
Curfew was suspended for the Puttalam, Vaunia, Mannar and Kilinochchi districts today from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Residents of the districts had utilized this time to purchase essential items, including food. Many residents in the Puttalam district had adhered to safety regulations. As a result of the Chilao market being inoperative today, vegetables and other goods were sold beside the road. Here are the footage of the Anamaduva town at noon today. Food items including vegetables were sold on the side of the road today in the Vaunia town. All vehicles entering the Vaunia town were sterilized at the Irat Periyakuram police checkpoint in a joint effort by the police and the Pradesha Sabha. The curfew, which was imposed on Colombo, Gampaha, Kalutara and Jaffna districts, which have been identified as high-risk zones, is still in effect. The curfew in effect will be lifted for the remaining districts on Monday at 6 a.m.
We are now joined by Shamil Rasuldeen from Studio R.
Thank you very much, Azra. Joining us this evening for a quick chat on COVID-19 is Professor Indika Karunatilaka, President of the Sri Lanka Medical Association. A very good evening to you and welcome, Professor Karunatilaka. Starting off, Sri Lanka has done comparatively well than other nations when it comes to COVID-19 since the first victim was detected on the 11th of March. Can we safely say that Sri Lanka is now not in a bad position as we expected before?
Okay, so let me put it in this way, Shamil. When we compare with other countries, we can say that Sri Lanka has done exceptionally well, and it's evident by the numbers as well. And the credit should go to the government and the health authorities, the triforces, law enforcement, and especially the health workers and professionals and the citizens of the country. However, I would like to attribute the major part of the credit to the very strong public health system in Sri Lanka. For this disease doesn't have any definitive cure. There are no vaccines. The only way to prevent the spread is through preventive measures. And Sri Lanka has a very strong system that emphasizes disease prevention, sanitation and basic hygiene. Those are the most important aspects that you need to prevent the spread of this disease.
However, starting from the 11th of March to date, we have only less than 100 cases, confirmed cases thus far.
Correct.
Is it a time to be complacent about the situation and think, okay, Sri Lanka is on the right track, hence we can go out we can violate curfew rules, so on and so forth. Is this a time to think like that?
Absolutely not. I would say this is a time to be more vigilant because there are many reasons. One is this virus is very virulent, very infectious. And secondly, the numbers that we are seeing today is the infection that has happened or taken place about maybe few days or 2 weeks before maximum because of the incubation period. The infection that is happening right now would be evident in only in 1 week's time or 2 weeks' time. And but by that time, it would have reached more patients. So I don't think we can be complacent. This time to be vigilant, and the most important thing is we need to stick to the guidelines and the advice of the health authorities. And the most important step that we need to take is we need to detect patients and isolate the contacts and prevent the spread.
Professor Karunathilaka, when you look at the world, you see Boris Johnson now being infected with COVID-19. Yes. We saw Prince Charles being infected with COVID-19. Does the Sri Lankan public health system allow individuals or doctors to reveal the names of those who are infected for the betterment of the community at large? Because it may help for individuals who are in direct contact with a patient to come out and say, okay, I have had direct contact, so I have to be on self-quarantine. Does the public health system in Sri Lanka allow that during a situation of a pandemic?
Yes, more than a legal enforcement, divulging the patient confidentiality or the information is against medical ethics. It's a breach of medical ethics as a violation, as well as a violation of the country's law, because we might think in that way we might be able to find out what are the contacts. But on the other hand, what will happen is through this violation we are creating a stigma, and because of this stigma the patients will not be able to, they would not like to come out with their information or the true details, and that has happened many times in the hospitals, and that had led to catastrophic situation in the hospitals. So the best thing that we can do is ensure confidentiality and have trust on the health system, because as I mentioned previously, we have a very strong public health system who are capable of identifying the contacts and then take the necessary measures like quarantine or isolation. It has happened already.
Let's look at the world now, Professor Karunathilaka. As you speak about the situation in Sri Lanka, the situation in the world is quite dire.
Yes.
Let's talk about Wuhan. It was the epicenter before, then it shifted to Italy and then subsequently to Spain, and now the epicenter seems to be New York, the United States of America. So the virus does not have any boundaries.
It does not.
So how can we manage this menace if there is no boundaries, there is no restrictions? How can we as a nation prevent something of this sort coming into our shores again?
Yes, you are very correct in saying that it doesn't have boundaries and it spread very fast. First, let me explain why this is spreading very fast. One reason is this is a new virus. That's why we call it novel coronavirus. And since it is so new, people are getting exposed to that virus only now, and there is no immunity. For other viruses, they have been exposed for years and years or even for centuries. So we have immunity. For this new virus, we don't have immunity. Therefore, if we allow it to spread, this virus will spread unstoppably, continuously. It goes like generally worldwide research data says that one infected person can infect up to 2 to 5 persons. In general, it can be even more. So if you...
The GMO in Sri Lanka says at least 500 people could be infected if one person is infected with COVID-19.
Extreme situation, it may be possible. Something like that has happened in Korea as well. But generally, in one cycle, one patient would infect about 2 to 5 people. That's the general research findings worldwide. I mean, research findings are also emerging worldwide. So even if we think of that scenario, even that simple scenario, one person infecting 2 people, if you go on like that, it will be doubling. So it goes like 2, 4, so on and so forth. So within few short cycles, it can engulf the whole area or the whole world. So that is why it's so important to prevent. So if you allow this uncontrollable spread, it will happen. So to break it, only thing that you can do is avoid getting infection by avoiding going to public places, avoid basic hygiene like hand washing, so on and so forth, identify the contacts, isolate them. In that way, you can break the cycle.
Professor Karunathalaka, if you look at the world, many say that pandemics of this sort is cyclic. In 1918, we saw the Spanish flu claiming the lives of approximately around 17 million people and infecting around 500 million people. And Sri Lanka was among the top countries that was infected with the virus, and the number of deaths from Sri Lanka that emerged in 1920 was quite significant. Is this pandemic something to worry about of this sort, or have we passed beyond that stage and are we looking at something which would last for the next 2 years or 3 years per se? When will we see an end, basically? That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, honestly speaking, that's anybody's guess. But if you look at the infectivity of this virus and the fact that we haven't developed the immunity for this virus yet, and there is no vaccine identified for this virus at the moment, I would guess it would take some time. It looks like a long drawn out battle. If you go by the world situation, the steps that are taken by the other countries, we can assume that this is not going to be something that will end in few days or few weeks. Probably in the best case scenario, we may be talking about few months. I may be wrong, I mean, this is anybody's guess, but it will be very safe to assume that this is a long drawn out battle, and as a country we should be able to coexist and adapt ourselves to this, live with this, and probably the health sector, not only health sector, even education, economics, all other areas, we should develop and think out of the box and adapt measures so that even if this lasts long, because only thing that we can do is keep this situation under control till we become strong enough, immune enough to face this threat.
The news that is coming from the world very clearly indicates that China, as an example, Wuhan was locked down for nearly 3 months, and it's going to be open on the 8th of April. So it was around approximately 3.5 months since the country was on lockdown.
Exactly.
In Sri Lanka, it's the 15th day yet after the partial curfew or the partial lockdown was imposed by the government.
Yeah.
How long will this go on for? Because you say it's a long battle.
It's a long battle. And again, I would say, yeah, still we are at a very early stage of the spread of the infection. What we can see is, what we are seeing at the moment is the first cluster of patients, the imported cases and the patients who got the disease from them. And all of them can be traced to the links. So what we can say is, at the moment we are seeing the first cluster, and at the moment we are not seeing a community spread. What we mean by that is, all the patients currently we are seeing can be traced to particular origin. They can be identified.
So when it's not a community spread, wearing masks are not essential?
Not essential. This is a very contentious area. There's a lot of debate on this. And one thing we have to be very clear is, health authorities are not saying that not to wear mask. What the health authorities are saying is, for the healthy individuals, it is not essential at this moment to wear a mask. That's because of many reasons. The most important reason is what we have mentioned. At the moment, there is no community spread identifiable. But if we are having a respiratory illness, then it's very advisable to wear a mask.
Right. Very quickly, Professor, before we wrap up this evening's brief chat, who decides on the curfew? Because you have the Sri Lanka Medical Association, you have the Sri Lanka Medical Council, then you have the Government Medical Officers Association, then you have the epidemiology unit, then you have the National Hospital of Colombo, which is actively involved, and the IDH as well. So who decides on the imposition of a curfew in a situation like this? Because right now, no one knows when the curfew will be lifted for Colombo, Kalutara, Gampa, and even Jaffna for that matter. So who decides on the curfew?
Okay, yeah. I would say again, no one person, no one organization can take decision. This has to be teamwork. All these different stakeholders coming in. And this kind of decision has to be based on scientific evidence. In medicine, in public health, we talk about modeling. We should be able to do a statistical modeling and identify what kind of spreading patterns we can expect in the days to come. So that would be one aspect. Another suggestion that I want to make is we need to think beyond lockdown. We need to think beyond curfew, because at the moment what's required is we need to control this situation till we become strong enough, and that's a long drawn out battle. So you need some kind of control, some kind of vigil. It may not be curfew, but you need some kind of vigil to go on, and during that time period, as a nation, we should learn how to coexist.
Thank you very much.
Our systems we need to adapt.
Thank you very much, Professor Indika Karunathilaka, President of the Sri Lanka Medical Association of Sri Lanka. Being scared is part of being alive. Accept it and let's all walk through it.
The general public has been severely affected as certain traders continue to sell goods at high rates. Today, the government imposed a maximum wholesale price on essential goods.
The Manning market in Petta was open for business today. Only wholesale traders were allowed to purchase essential items such as vegetables. Today, sellers at the Manning market were seen selling goods at controlled prices imposed by the government. Yesterday there was an issue in the Manning market. Vegetables were being sold at high rates. We imposed a maximum price and instructed traders to adhere to this in order to grant reliefs to the people. I am happy to note that all traders adhered by this directive while selling goods to the people. There is no issue in making profits, but it should be done reasonably. Do not get caught while selling goods above the stipulated rates. We will take strict legal action and cancel your permits. However, this was the situation in other areas of the country today. Meanwhile, the Dambulla Economic Centre was also filled with traders today. Meanwhile, Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva arrived at the Dambulla Economic Centre to inspect business activities which were taking place. We decided to open all economic centres. That is why we opened the Dambulla Economic Centre. More than 200 kilos of vegetables were sold to traders today. We will not take ad hoc decisions on imposing ceiling prices. We will make sure that the people will receive the benefits of this. The maximum wholesale price for cabbage is 70 rupees. For beans it's 110 and for leeks it's 100 rupees. The ceiling price for carrot in Noor Elia is 150 rupees and 100 rupees in Jaffna. The maximum wholesale price for beetroot in Noor Elia is 50 rupees. Beetroot without the greens in Mel Siripura and Jaffna is 60 rupees. The wholesale price of tomatoes is 80 rupees, while it is 110 rupees for chilies. Potatoes in Valimada is 140 rupees, while imported potatoes is 150 rupees. The maximum wholesale price for cloth gourd and ladies' fingers is 50 rupees. The other prices are as follows. Snake gourd 40 rupees, bitter gourd 60 rupees, cucumber 40 rupees, pumpkin imported from Malaysia 60 rupees, big pumpkin 60 rupees, lime 200 rupees, big local onions 220 rupees and watermelon 50 rupees. The Wholesale Trader Association in Noor Elia convened a media briefing regarding the ceiling prices of goods. Today we were informed that traders have been asked to transport vegetables from Noor Elia to Colombo and sell them at a cost of 150 rupees. If it is sold at 150 rupees, then it must be sold to wholesale traders at 100 rupees. We then observed that it was being sold at 160 rupees by wholesale traders. How can we sell these products at a cost of 150 rupees in Colombo? It is the Nadu variant which has been in demand in Noor Elia. However, when we purchase 10,000 kilos of Nadu rice from rice millers, they ask us to purchase 5,000 kilos of Kiri Samba as well. We are not in a position to incur such expenses. The government must intervene into this matter. A discussion in this regard took place between the Noor Elia District Secretary and the Noor Elia Wholesale Traders Association. When rice mill owners issue an order, they issue stocks of rice under certain conditions. When I was informed about this, I spoke to the Polonnaruwa District Secretary. He appointed an officer at the District of Planning. He said there is no need to impose such conditions and that the required amount of rice would be supplied to traders through the district secretary.
කෙලින්ම දිස්ත්‍රික් ලේකම් කාර්යාලය හරහා අපේ වෙළඳුන්ට සම්බන්ධ කරලා දෙන්න.
Several complications have arisen pertaining to the interest-free advance of 10,000 rupees which had been proposed to be given to the Samruddhi beneficiaries. The monetary advance was handed over to Samruddhi beneficiaries in the Kantale Pradesh Sabha in this manner. The district secretary said 5,000 rupees would be given under the first phase of the loan program named Sahana Piyavara.
All the applications were arranged yesterday. We have allocated 19 million rupees to be paid as loans. We saw the uneasy situation experienced by the people yesterday. However, both Samruddhi banks were able to pay all the beneficiaries by 1 p.m. yesterday. We issued 1.1 million rupees yesterday. Today we have issued 1.5 million and will travel from house to house and hand them over.
Samruddhi beneficiaries who had arrived at the Batigam Samruddhi Bank today said action should be taken against injustice that had taken place.
We are newly named Samruddhi beneficiaries. We don't have such a balance in our books. They say they would only give the 10,000 rupees if there is an 80% balance left in the book. Please provide us with some sort of relief. We don't have mammoth amounts in our book. If we did, we would survive from it. When they say they cannot give the money since we do not have that sort of a balance in our books, our hearts ache. We lived through many hardships. We are starving with our children.
Our correspondents in Gaul noted that the Samruddhi banks in Baddegama, Gonapinuwala, Arachikanda and Hikkadua had been closed today. All Samruddhi banks in Mahiyangane had been closed today. Samruddhi beneficiaries in the Polgahavela Samruddhi sector have been issued 5,000 rupees each.
Daily wage workers and sole traders and the entire working community are facing many difficulties due to the prevailing situation in the country. They do not have sufficient food stocks. They have no source of income. The government and all of us have the responsibility to intervene in this matter and help these vulnerable factions by providing them with food and essential items. The decision to pay only certain Samruddhi beneficiaries an advance of 10,000 rupees without any interest is a decision that I urge the government to reconsider given the prevailing situation in the country. This 10,000 rupee advance payment should be given to all Samruddhi beneficiaries. We suggest to offer a loan of 10,000 rupees to all Samruddhi beneficiaries. A complaint that we frequently receive is that this loan facility is granted to only those who received eligibility for Samruddhi beneficiaries before 2015. If so, that means that over 500,000 people don't receive this facility. That is a major issue. The government is responsible to ensure that everyone who is in need receives this. To receive a loan of 10,000 rupees, there must be 8,000 rupees remaining in the account. This is an unfortunate situation. We request the government to kindly remove these conditions and to treat all Samruddhi beneficiaries equally, because all those people are in need and all of them feel hunger. The government should do something more than this. The people are unable to purchase goods even though the government imposed prices. We initially suspected why Basil Rajapaksa was part of this operation. This is similar to letting the fox take care of the fowl. Today, this whole problem is politicized. We clearly stated that the issue being faced by the people is being misused for political gains. We request the government to provide the people with essential goods on a concessionary price or without any charges for a period of 2 weeks. All families who are eligible for Samruddhi benefits and those who depend on a low income will receive those benefits as mentioned in the circular. According to that, an ownership certificate will be issued to those families in order to receive essential food items. Rice, dal and onions will be given through the food card. There are 4 key government officials in a village. They are the Economic Development Officer, the Gramaniladario Officer, the Samruddhi Development Officer and the Agricultural Officer. Every village has an MP representing them. If one of these 5 officers are responsible to choose those who should receive benefits, there won't be an issue. Here, this should be properly managed.
The spread of COVID-19 has affected many sectors in the country, and one of them is the agricultural sector.
Watermelons are a common sight in the Vilgamore area in Matale thanks to the hard efforts of the farmers. Watermelons have been cultivated across 1,500 acres in this land. However, farmers are unable to sell their produce as it does not hold much importance at the Dambulla Economic Centre. Former Minister of the Central Province Council, Pramita Bandarathanakon, was the only politician who had visited this area to listen to the grievances of the farmers. Similar scenes were witnessed in the Tiripane area in Anuradhapura and the Pulyakulam area in Vaunia. Although watermelons have been cultivated across 400 acres in these areas, farmers are unable to sell them at a good price.
Farmers in Namal Oya Ampara who cultivated turmeric upon the instructions of the Ministry of Agriculture have been left with no option but to see their crops being destroyed.
The Namaloy area in Ampara is a favorable area for the cultivation of turmeric. Farmers have been badly affected as they cannot sell the spice crop due to the absence of traders. Turmeric should be harvested within the 2 weeks of the harvesting period. However, if water is supplied to these cultivation fields for the upcoming harvesting season, this crop cannot be harvested.
The World Bank and the International Monetary Fund has requested all official bilateral creditors to suspend debt repayments from developing nations to help face COVID-19 outbreak. In a joint statement to the G20, the World Bank and the IMF said the COVID-19 outbreak is likely to have severe economic and social consequences for the 76 countries in the International Development Association, home to a quarter of the world's population and two-thirds of the world's population living in extreme poverty. World Bank Group and the International Monetary Fund called on all official bilateral creditors to suspend debt payments from IDA countries or countries that are under the International Development Association with immediate effect and consistent with national laws of the creditor countries. Bolivia, Sri Lanka and Vietnam graduated from IDA at the end of 2017. However, global lending agencies said these three countries can receive transitional support on an exceptional basis. The statement said the suspension of debt payment will help with the ITA countries' immediate liquidity needs to tackle challenges posed by the COVID-19 and allow time for an assessment of the crisis impact and financing needs for each country. The statement further notes an endorsement for the proposal is expected at the Development Committee during the spring meetings from 16th April to the 17th. Now in more local news from the President's Media Division, the government is calling on Sri Lankan nationals domiciled overseas who may be expecting to return to the country to remain safely in their current location until the spread of the COVID-19 in the country is contained.
Issuing a statement this evening, the President's Media Division noted that all inbound overseas travel has been halted in a bid to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. The government notes that requests to return to the country have been made by Sri Lankan expatriates, including students, investors and professionals, will be reconsidered once the spread of COVID-19 has been arrested. The President's Media Division also cautioned Sri Lankan expatriates against travelling to airports and other hubs in their countries of residence as they too could contract the virus as a result. Meanwhile, Additional Secretary on International Relations at the Presidential Secretariat, Admiral Jayanath Kolambage, has requested Sri Lankan expatriates to share their contact information with the respective Sri Lankan embassy or consulate in their country of residence.
Local taxi service Pick Me has issued a clarification pertaining to its services concerning emergency transport and the delivery of essential food items.
As a Sri Lankan company, we were requested by the government directly to assist in the nationwide service of delivering essential goods and especially delivering gas cylinders to households in the Colombo district. We have delivered 2,500 gas cylinders for those in the Colombo district, in the Gampaha district, as well as the Kandy district from 15 different outlets. We have also partnered up with the state institution Satosa to deliver essential packs. And as of today, in the Colombo district, we are delivering from 3 locations. And so far, we have already surpassed over 2,000 packs of deliveries of the same.
Amnesty International's Regional Director for South Asia responded to the decision made by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to release Sergeant Sunil Ratnayaka.
In a statement, Amnesty International's regional director for South Asia, Biraj Panaik, said, quote, "Where accountability is so rare for serious human rights violation in Sri Lanka, the government's arbitrary decision to release Sergeant Ratnayaka sends an extremely worrying message. It means that military perpetrators of horrific crimes, even if convicted through a court of law, will be pardoned and released," end quote. The statement said the pardon comes at a time where there are public calls to ease prison crowding by releasing prisoners held for, amongst others, petty crimes and those who are unable to meet bail conditions to avoid the spread of COVID-19. Amnesty International is also concerned by any further decision along the same lines as pledged by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa during his election campaign. Biraj Patnaik added, quote, "Using the pandemic as an opportunity to release those convicted for heinous crimes is reprehensible. Victims have a right to justice, and Sri Lanka has an obligation to ensure that justice is done. After many long years, the victims of the Mirisuville massacre from 2000 finally got a semblance of justice in 2015. It is despicable to have that justice reversed through an arbitrary executive decision," end quote.
The Gammadda team has begun receiving entries for its creative art competition held under the theme Rise Up Sri Lanka initiative. Now these artworks, which have been sent from many parts of the country under the theme Sri Lanka you would like to see, after emerging out of our present challenges. Now stay tuned to us, we will keep showing you artworks, but that's the wrap of this edition of Primetime News for tonight. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Azrasan. We thank Tarka Gabriel for interpreting the news broadcast to you. Stay safe and good night.